The first time Marcus showed up at my door unannounced, I thought nothing of it. We had been friends since college, and even though 5 years had passed since graduation, our friendship remained one of those comfortable, easy relationships that required no maintenance. He stood there in my doorway at 9:30 on a Tuesday evening, holding a six-pack of beer and wearing that lopsided grin that had gotten him out of trouble more times than I could count. "Hope you don't mind the company," he said, pushing past me into my apartment without waiting for an answer. Sarah's working late again, and I was going stir-crazy at home. Sarah was his girlfriend of 3 years, a lawyer who worked brutal hours at a downtown firm. I had met her a handful of times at group gatherings, and she seemed nice enough, though I always got the impression she barely tolerated Marcus's friends. She was polished and ambitious in a way that made the rest of us feel like we were still playing dress-up in our adult lives. "Of course not," I said, closing the door behind him. "Want to watch the game?" That night set a pattern that I didn't recognize until it was already deeply established. Marcus would show up 2 or 3 times a week, always with some excuse about Sarah working late or having plans with her colleagues. We would drink beer, watch television, and talk about everything and nothing the way we had in college. It felt natural, comfortable, like slipping back into an old routine. The first time he fell asleep on my couch, I covered him with a blanket and went to bed. When I woke up the next morning, he was gone, leaving only a note thanking me for letting him crash. The second time, he asked if he could stay over before he got too drunk to drive home safely. The third time, he didn't ask at all. "You know," he said one evening as we sat watching a movie, "this is nice. Just hanging out without any pressure or expectations." I glanced over at him, trying to read the expression on his face in the flickering light from the television. Marcus had always been handsome in an effortless way that made people gravitate toward him. Dark hair that never seemed to need styling, green eyes that crinkled when he smiled, and the kind of easy confidence that came from never having to worry about whether people liked him. In college, he had dated a string of beautiful women, each relationship lasting just long enough to avoid being called a player, but never long enough to suggest he was ready to settle down. "Yeah," I agreed, settling deeper into the couch. "It is nice." What I didn't say was that these evenings had become the highlight of my week. What I didn't say was that I looked forward to the sound of his key in my lock, because somewhere along the way, I had given him a spare key without really thinking about what that meant. What I didn't say was that I had been harboring feelings for my straight best friend for years, feelings that I had carefully buried under layers of friendship and denial. The sleeping arrangements evolved gradually. First, he would crash on the couch after we had been drinking. Then he started bringing an overnight bag, as if he had planned to stay from the beginning. Eventually, he began complaining about his back hurting from sleeping on the couch, and somehow that led to him sleeping in my bed. "Is this weird?" he asked the first night we shared my bed, both of us lying stiffly on opposite sides of the mattress with what felt like an ocean of space between us. "No," I lied, acutely aware of his presence beside me, the sound of his breathing, the warmth radiating from his body. "We're friends. It's fine." And it was fine, in the way that slowly boiling water is fine until suddenly it isn't. We developed an unspoken routine. He would arrive sometime after dinner, we would hang out until we were both tired, and then we would go to bed like an old married couple. In the morning, he would shower, borrow my clothes if he needed them, and head to work from my apartment. "You're practically living here," I joked one morning as he stood in my kitchen making coffee in his boxer shorts and one of my t-shirts. He paused, coffee mug halfway to his lips, and for a moment something flickered across his face that I couldn't quite identify. "Is that a problem?" "No," I said quickly. "I just meant, don't you think Sarah might wonder where you're spending all your time?" "Sarah's got her own thing going on," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "She's always working or out with her work friends. I don't think she's even noticed." There was something in the way he said it that made me want to ask more questions, but Marcus had always been good at deflecting when he didn't want to talk about something. Instead, he started telling me about a project at work, and the moment passed. The truth was, I didn't want to examine too closely what was happening between us. Having Marcus in my space, in my bed, even platonically, felt like getting to live out a fantasy I had never allowed myself to fully acknowledge. When he would fall asleep next to me, sometimes his arm would end up thrown across my chest, or his leg would tangle with mine, and I would lie awake feeling guilty for how much I enjoyed the contact. "You're a good friend," he told me one night as we lay in the dark. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "You'd figure it out," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "You always do." "No, I'm serious," he said, turning onto his side to face me. Even in the darkness, I could feel the intensity of his gaze. You're the most constant thing in my life. Everyone else, they want something from me, you know? But with you, I can just be myself." My heart hammered against my ribs as I tried to think of an appropriate response. "That's what friends are for," I managed finally. "Yeah," he said softly. "Friends." The way he said the word made it sound like a question, but before I could analyze it further, his breathing had evened out into sleep, leaving me to stare at the ceiling and wonder what the hell was happening to my carefully ordered life. The shift happened so gradually that I almost missed it. Marcus began staying over every single night, not just a few times a week. His belongings started appearing in my apartment, a toothbrush in my bathroom, clothes in my laundry hamper, his favorite cereal in my kitchen cabinet. When I mentioned that he seemed to be accumulating a lot of stuff at my place, he laughed it off. "I'll clean it up," he said, but he never did. If anything, he seemed to be settling in more permanently. The physical boundaries between us began to blur as well. He would put his arm around me while we watched television, claiming he was cold. He started changing clothes in front of me without any self-consciousness. When we went to bed, he would curl up against me, mumbling something about the air conditioning being too high, and I would lie there trying to control my breathing while his body pressed against mine. "This is nice," he would say sometimes, half asleep, his arm tightening around me. "Really nice?" I told myself it didn't mean anything. Marcus had always been physically affectionate with his friends, and he was probably just lonely with Sarah working so much. But there were moments when I caught him looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher, moments when his touch lingered a little too long, moments when the air between us felt charged with something unnamed. The breaking point came on a Friday night in October. We had been drinking more than usual, sharing a bottle of whiskey while we talked about college memories and complained about our jobs. Marcus was more relaxed than I had seen him in months, laughing easily and sitting closer to me on the couch than strictly necessary. "Remember that time junior year when you had to carry me home from that party?" he asked, his words slightly slurred. "You mean the time you decided you could drink an entire bottle of tequila by yourself?" I said. "Yeah, I remember. You threw up in my car. I paid to have it cleaned," he protested, but he was grinning. "You took such good care of me that night. You always take care of me." There was something in his voice that made me look at him more closely. His cheeks were flushed from the alcohol, and his hair was messed up from running his hands through it, but it was his eyes that caught my attention. He was looking at me with an intensity that made my stomach flip. "Marcus," I started, but I didn't know how to finish the sentence. "Can I tell you something?" he said, shifting even closer to me on the couch. "Something I've never told anyone?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Sometimes I think about what it would be like," he said quietly, his eyes never leaving mine, "to be with someone who really gets me. Someone who doesn't expect me to be anything other than what I am." My heart was beating so hard I was sure he could hear it. "Marcus, you're drunk." "Not that drunk," he said, reaching out to touch my face. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone, and I felt like I might stop breathing altogether. "I've been thinking about this for a while now. About us." "There is no us," I said, but even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. There had been an us for months now, maybe longer. We just hadn't named it. "Isn't there?" he asked, leaning closer. "We live together, we sleep together, we spend every free moment together. What would you call that?" "Friendship," I said weakly. "Is that all this is to you?" he asked, his hand still on my face. "Because it doesn't feel like just friendship to me." Before I could respond, he was kissing me. It was soft at first, tentative, like he was giving me a chance to pull away. When I didn't, he deepened a kiss, his other hand coming up to tangle in my hair. I kissed him back, all my carefully maintained walls crumbling in an instant. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Marcus rested his forehead against mine, his eyes closed. "I've wanted to do that for so long," he whispered. "Marcus," I said, trying to inject some sanity into the situation. "You have a girlfriend. You're straight." He opened his eyes and looked at me with something that might have been amusement. "Am I? Aren't you?" "I don't know," he said honestly. "I thought I was. But then there's you, and nothing about how I feel about you fits into any neat category." We ended up in bed that night, not to sleep, but to explore this new territory between us with careful hands and whispered confessions. Marcus was tentative at first, unsure of himself in a way I had never seen before, but he was also eager and surprisingly intuitive. When it was over, we lay tangled together in the sheets, both of us quiet. "What happens now?" I asked eventually. "I don't know," he said, his fingers tracing patterns on my chest. "I need to figure some things out. With Sarah. With everything," he said. "But I know I don't want to stop this. Whatever this is." The next morning brought awkwardness and uncertainty. Marcus was quieter than usual as he got ready for work, and I found myself overthinking every interaction. Had we made a mistake? Was he regretting what had happened? When he kissed me goodbye at the door, soft and lingering, some of my fears were eased, but not all of them. "I'll see you tonight," he asked. "If you want to come over," I said. "I want to," he said firmly. "We need to talk about this, but I want to be here." He was true to his word, showing up at my door that evening with takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant and a serious expression. We ate in relative silence, both of us dancing around the conversation we needed to have. "I broke up with Sarah today," he said finally, setting down his chopsticks. I nearly choked on my pad thai. "You what?" "I broke up with her," he repeated. "It wasn't fair to her, what I was doing. Spending every night here, feeling the way I feel about you. She deserved better than that." "How did she take it?" Marcus ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I had come to recognize as a sign of stress. "Better than I expected, actually. I think she knew something was going on. She said she'd been feeling like I was pulling away for months." "Did you tell her about me?" "No," he said quickly. "I just said I needed to figure some things out about myself." Which is true. We talked late into the night, trying to navigate this new reality. Marcus was honest about his confusion, about how his feelings for me had developed gradually and then hit him all at once. He talked about how he had never questioned his sexuality before, how he had always assumed he was straight because that was the default, the expected thing. "But I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you," he said. "Not Sarah, not any of the other women I've dated. This is different." "Different how?" I asked. "More real," he said after a moment. "Like I can finally stop pretending to be someone I'm not." Over the following weeks, we settled into a new routine. Marcus officially moved in with me, bringing the rest of his belongings from the apartment he had shared with Sarah. We were careful at first, both physically and emotionally, taking time to adjust to the shift in our relationship. But gradually, we found our rhythm. Marcus threw himself into exploring this new side of himself with the same enthusiasm he brought to everything else. He read articles online, asked me endless questions about my own experience coming out, and even suggested we go to a gay bar together. "Are you sure you're ready for that?" I asked. "I want to understand this part of your world," he said. "This part of our world now." The gay bar was an adventure. Marcus was nervous at first, hyper-aware of everything around him, but he relaxed as the evening went on. He was fascinated by the diversity of people, the openness, the way men could dance together and show affection without judgment. "This is amazing," he said as we slow danced to a song I didn't recognize. "I had no idea it could be like this." "Like what?" "Free," he said. "Like I don't have to hide or pretend or worry about what people think." Watching Marcus discover this part of himself was both beautiful and heartbreaking. Beautiful because he was so genuinely excited about every new experience, every realization about himself. Heartbreaking because I could see how much of himself he had been suppressing for years without even realizing it. "I think I might be gay," he told me one night as we lay in bed together. "Might be." "Okay, I am gay," he said, laughing at himself. "That's still weird to say out loud. How does it feel?" "Scary," he said honestly, "but also right." Like a piece of the puzzle finally clicked into place. We talked about coming out to our friends and families, about what this meant for his career, about all the practical considerations that came with this kind of revelation. Marcus was determined to be open about who he was, even if it meant difficult conversations. "I'm tired of hiding," he said. "I've been hiding from myself for so long, I don't want to hide from anyone else." The first person he told was his sister, who lived across the country but had always been his closest family member. He called her on a Sunday afternoon while I was in the kitchen making lunch, and I could hear his side of the conversation through the thin walls of my apartment. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice nervous but determined. "I'm gay, and I'm in love with my best friend." There was a long pause, and then I heard him laugh, the sound full of relief. "Yes, the same best friend you've been telling me to ask out for years," he said. "Turns out you were right." When he hung up the phone, he was grinning from ear to ear. "She said she knew before I did," he told me. "Apparently, I talk about you too much for it to be just friendship." Coming out to our college friends was more complicated. We had planned to tell them together at our monthly get-together, but word somehow got out beforehand. By the time we arrived at the bar where we always met, everyone already knew. "So," said Jake, one of our mutual friends, raising his beer in a mock toast, "Marcus is gay now." The way he said it made my stomach clench, but Marcus just nodded calmly. "I am," he said. "And we're together." The reactions were mixed. Some of our friends were supportive, others seemed uncomfortable, and a few made jokes that weren't quite mean but weren't quite funny either. Marcus handled it all with more grace than I would have managed, answering questions patiently and refusing to be defensive about his choices. "It's not a choice," he corrected one friend who asked why he had decided to be gay. "It's who I am. I just finally figured it out." Later, as we walked home from the bar, I asked him how he was feeling about the whole evening. "It went better than I expected," he said. "Some of them will come around, and the ones who don't, well, maybe they weren't really friends anyway." "Are you okay with potentially losing some friendships over this?" "I'm okay with losing friendships that were conditional on me being someone I'm not," he said firmly. "I spent too many years pretending. I'm not going to do it anymore." His confidence was inspiring, but I could tell the evening had taken a toll on him. When we got home, he was quieter than usual, and I found him standing on our balcony staring out at the city lights. "Second thoughts?" I asked, joining him outside. "No," he said immediately. "Not about this, not about us. I guess I didn't realize how much of my life was built on assumptions about who I was supposed to be." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I chose my career partly because I thought it was what a straight guy was supposed to do. I dated women because that was expected. I even chose the apartment with Sarah based on what I thought would look right to other people." He shook his head. "It's like I've been living someone else's life. So what do you want to do about it?" "I want to figure out who I really am," he said. "Not who I think I'm supposed to be, but who I actually am. And I want to build a life that's true to that person." Over the following months, Marcus did exactly that. He started seeing a therapist to work through his feelings about coming out later in life. He changed jobs, moving from corporate finance to working for a nonprofit that focused on LGBTQ youth services. He even changed his style, trading his conservative business suits for clothes that felt more authentically him. "I feel like I'm finally becoming myself," he told me one evening as we cooked dinner together. "Like I'm shedding this costume I've been wearing my whole life." "I love watching you discover who you are," I said, and I meant it. Even though there were moments when I worried that this new version of Marcus might decide he wanted something different than what we had, I was genuinely happy to see him so comfortable in his own skin. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had figured this out sooner," he mused. "Like, what if I had known in college? Would we have gotten together then?" "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe you needed to go through everything you went through to get to this point. Do you ever wish I had figured it out sooner?" I considered the question carefully. "I wish you hadn't had to spend so many years feeling disconnected from yourself. But I don't regret the path that brought us here, even though it was messy and complicated." "Especially because it was messy and complicated," I said. "Easy things don't usually last." Marcus's family took the news of his sexuality and our relationship better than either of us had expected. His parents were surprised but ultimately supportive, and his sister was thrilled that he was finally happy. My own family, who had known I was gay for years, welcomed Marcus with open arms. "I like him better now," my mother told me privately during a family dinner. "He seems more relaxed, more genuine." "He is," I agreed. "He's finally being himself. And he clearly adores you," she said. "It's written all over his face when he looks at you." It was true. Marcus had a way of looking at me that made me feel like the most important person in the world. It was something I had noticed even before we got together, but now it was more open, more intentional. He wasn't hiding his feelings anymore, and the intensity of his affection was sometimes overwhelming in the best possible way. "I love you," he told me one night as we lay in bed together. It wasn't the first time he had said it, but something about the way he said it that night felt different, more settled. "I love you too," I said. "No, I mean I really love you," he said, propping himself up on his elbow to look at me. "Like, I want to spend the rest of my life with you, love you." My heart skipped a beat. "Marcus." "I know it's fast," he said quickly. "I know I'm still figuring things out, and maybe it's crazy to be thinking about forever when I just came out a few months ago. But I've never been more sure of anything in my life." "It's not crazy," I said softly. "I've been thinking the same thing." "Really? Really? I've been in love with you for years, Marcus. I just never thought I'd get to have this with you." He kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When we broke apart, he was smiling that lopsided grin that had first made me fall for him all those years ago. "So what do you think?" he asked. "Want to make this official? What did you have in mind?" "I don't know yet," he said. "But I want everyone to know that you're mine and I'm yours. I want to make promises and mean them." "I'd like that," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Good," he said, settling back down beside me. "Because I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me." "I can think of worse fates," I said, and he laughed. As I lay there listening to his breathing even out into sleep, I thought about how dramatically my life had changed. A year ago, Marcus was my straight best friend who crashed on my couch occasionally. Now he was the love of my life, the person I wanted to wake up next to every morning for the rest of my life. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been moments of doubt, difficult conversations, and the challenge of navigating a relationship with someone who was still figuring out his own identity. But it had also been beautiful, watching Marcus discover parts of himself he had never known existed, seeing him become more confident and authentic with each passing day. "Thank you," he whispered in the darkness, startling me. I had thought he was asleep. For what? For being patient with me. For letting me figure this out at my own pace. For loving me even when I didn't know how to love myself. "You don't have to thank me for that," I said. "That's what love is." "Still," he said, his arm tightening around me. "Thank you." The next morning, Marcus woke up before me and made coffee, bringing me a cup in bed along with a smile that could have powered the entire city. It was a small gesture, but it felt significant somehow, like a promise of all the mornings to come. "What's the plan for today?" I asked, accepting the coffee gratefully. "I was thinking we could look at rings," he said casually, as if he were suggesting we go grocery shopping. I nearly spilled coffee all over myself. "Rings. Engagement rings," he clarified, grinning at my expression. "Unless you want to wait longer?" "No," I said quickly. "I don't want to wait. Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything," he said, leaning down to kiss me. "I want to marry you. I want to build a life with you. I want to adopt a dog and argue about whose turn it is to do the dishes and grow old together." "That sounds perfect," I said, my heart so full it felt like it might burst. Yeah. Let's go look at rings." As we got ready for our ring shopping adventure, I couldn't help but marvel at how far we had come. From late-night visits and shared beds to engagement rings and promises of forever. It hadn't been the straightforward love story either of us might have expected, but it was ours, and that made it perfect. "Ready?" Marcus asked, holding out his hand to me. I took his hand, intertwining our fingers, and smiled. "Ready?" We walked out into the bright morning sunshine together, two people who had found their way to each other despite all the obstacles and complications and fears. It had taken time, patience, and no small amount of courage, but we had made it. We were making it, and we would continue to make it, one day at a time, for the rest of our lives. The ring shopping turned into an all-day adventure. We visited 6 different jewelry stores, tried on dozens of rings, and had long conversations with patient sales associates who seemed charmed by our story. Marcus approached the task with the same thoroughness he brought to everything else, asking detailed questions about cut and clarity and setting styles. "I wanted to be perfect," he told me as we sat in a coffee shop between stores, comparing notes on what we had seen. "It will be perfect because it's from you," I said. "You don't have to overthink this." "But I want to," he said. "This is important. This is as promising to spend our lives together. It deserves to be perfect." In the end, we chose simple platinum bands with a small diamond in each one. Nothing flashy or ostentatious, just elegant and timeless. The jeweler promised they would be ready in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, Marcus said as we walked home, swinging our joined hands between us. "In 2 weeks, we'll be engaged." "We're already engaged," I pointed out. "The rings are just a symbol." "I know, but still, it'll make it official. More official than living together and planning to spend our lives together." "You know what I mean," he said, bumping my shoulder with his. "Don't be difficult." "I'm not being difficult. I'm being practical." "Same thing with you," he said, but he was smiling. That night, we called our families to share the news. My parents were thrilled, and my mother immediately started talking about wedding planning. Marcus's parents were equally excited, and his sister screamed so loudly we had to hold the phone away from our ears. "I can't believe my baby brother is getting married," she said when she had calmed down enough to speak normally. "And to someone who actually deserves him." "Hey," Marcus protested. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you've finally found someone who sees through your charming exterior to the disaster underneath," she said fondly. "And loves you anyway." "Thanks for the vote of confidence," Marcus said dryly, but he was grinning. After we hung up, we spent the evening on the couch, talking about what kind of wedding we wanted. Neither of us was interested in anything elaborate or traditional. We talked about a small ceremony with just our families and closest friends, maybe somewhere outdoors, nothing too formal or fussy. "I just want to marry you," Marcus said. "Everything else is just details." "Good thing," I said, because I have no idea how to plan a wedding. "We'll figure it out," he said confidently. "We've figured out everything else." The 2 weeks until our rings were ready passed quickly. Marcus threw himself into wedding planning with characteristic enthusiasm, researching venues and photographers and caterers. I was content to let him take the lead, contributing opinions when asked, but mostly just enjoying watching him get excited about our future. The day we picked up the rings, Marcus was more nervous than I had seen him since the night we first kissed. His hands were actually shaking as the jeweler brought out the small velvet boxes. "They're perfect," he breathed, staring down at the rings. "They are," I agreed. "Should we put them on now?" he asked. "Do you want to?" "I want to," he said. "But I also want to do this right. Like, with a proper proposal." "Marcus, we already decided to get married. You don't need to propose." "I know I don't need to," he said. "I want to. This is important to me." So that evening, Marcus orchestrated what he called a proper proposal. He made dinner reservations at the restaurant where we had gone on our first official date, the one that had happened about a month after we got together, and he had decided he wanted to take me somewhere nice to celebrate us. The same restaurant where he had been so nervous he had barely eaten anything, too busy staring at me and marveling at the fact that we were actually on a date. "This is where it all started," he said as we sat at the same table we had occupied that first night. "Actually, it started in my apartment when you showed up with beer and never left," I corrected. "Okay, this is where we made it official," he amended. After dinner, he walked me to the same park where we had gone that first night, the one with the duck pond and the old oak trees. It was dark now, the path lit by antique street lamps that cast everything in a warm, golden glow. "I have something I want to say," he said, stopping beside the pond. "Marcus, you don't have to." "Let me do this," he said, pulling the ring box out of his pocket. "Please." I nodded, my throat suddenly tight with emotion. A year ago, I was living a life that looked right on paper but felt wrong in every way that mattered, he began. I was with someone I didn't really love, doing a job that didn't fulfill me, pretending to be someone I wasn't. I was lonely even when I was surrounded by people, disconnected from myself and everyone around me. He paused, looking down at the ring box in his hands before meeting my eyes again. "And then I started spending time with you, really spending time with you, and everything changed. You didn't ask me to be anyone other than who I was. You didn't judge me or try to fix me or expect me to be perfect. You just accepted me. And somehow, in accepting me, you helped me accept myself." My eyes were starting to water, and I blinked rapidly, trying to keep the tears at bay. "I know this hasn't been the most conventional love story," he continued. "I know I took a long time to figure out who I was and what I wanted. But I also know that I have never been more certain of anything than I am of this, of us. You are my best friend, my partner, my home. You are the person I want to laugh with and cry with and build a life with." He dropped to one knee then, opening the ring box to reveal the simple platinum band we had chosen together. "So," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "will you marry me?" "Yes," I said, the word coming out as barely more than a whisper. "Yes, of course, yes." He slipped the ring onto my finger with shaking hands, and then I was pulling him to his feet and kissing him, both of us laughing and crying at the same time. When we broke apart, he held out his hand so I could put his ring on his finger, and we stood there in the lamplight, admiring the way the diamonds caught the light. "We're engaged," he said, sounding slightly amazed. "We're engaged," I agreed. "I love you so much," he said, pulling me close. "I love you too." As we walked home, Marcus couldn't stop looking at his ring, turning his hand this way and that to catch the light. "I never thought I'd be the type of person who cared about jewelry," he said. "But I love this ring. I love what it means." "What does it mean to you?" "It means I'm yours," he said simply. "And you're mine. It means we chose each other, and we're going to keep choosing each other every day for the rest of our lives." "That's exactly what it means," I said, squeezing his hand. The wedding planning process was surprisingly smooth. We found a venue we loved, a small garden pavilion at a local botanical conservatory. We hired a photographer whose work we admired, found a caterer who specialized in small, intimate gatherings, and ordered flowers that would complement the natural beauty of the garden setting. "This is going to be perfect," Marcus said as we walked through the garden during our final venue visit. "Small, intimate, beautiful. Just like us. Just like us." I teased. "Are you calling us small?" "I'm calling us perfect," he said, stopping to kiss me beside a fountain surrounded by blooming roses. The guest list was short, just our immediate families and a handful of close friends. Marcus had been worried about inviting our college friends, given the mixed reactions to our relationship, but in the end, most of them had come around. Even Jake, who had made the awkward comment about Marcus being gay now, had apologized and asked to be included. "People need time to adjust," Marcus had said philosophically. I needed time to adjust too. 2 weeks before the wedding, Marcus's ex-girlfriend Sarah reached out to him. She had heard about the engagement through mutual friends and wanted to congratulate him. They met for coffee, a conversation that Marcus had been dreading, but that turned out to be surprisingly healing for both of them. She said she was happy for me, he told me afterward. She said she could tell something was missing when we were together, but she never knew what it was. Now she understands. How do you feel about that? Relieved, he said, and grateful that we can both move forward without any hard feelings. The night before the wedding, we stayed in separate hotel rooms, honoring the tradition of not seeing each other before the ceremony. It felt strange after months of sleeping in the same bed every night, and I found myself lying awake, too excited and nervous to sleep. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Can't sleep. Too excited to marry you tomorrow. I texted back. Same. I love you. I love you too. See you at the altar. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright, perfect weather for an outdoor ceremony. I got ready with my groomsmen, my brother, and my best friend from college, while Marcus got ready with his sister and his best friend from work. We had decided to do a first look, a private moment before the ceremony where we would see each other in our wedding attire for the first time. The photographer positioned us back to back in the garden, and then on the count of 3, we turned around. Marcus looked incredible in his navy blue suit, his hair perfectly styled, his face bright with joy. But it was the expression in his eyes that took my breath away. He looked at me like I was everything he had ever wanted, like I was the answer to every question he had ever asked. You look amazing, he said, his voice thick with emotion. So do you, I managed, blinking back tears. We had planned to take some photos during this time, but instead we just stood there holding each other, both of us overwhelmed by the magnitude of what we were about to do. Are you ready for this? He asked. I've been ready for this my whole life, I said. I just didn't know it until I met you. The ceremony itself was everything we had hoped it would be. Simple, heartfelt, surrounded by the people who mattered most to us. Marcus's sister officiated, having gotten ordained online specifically for our wedding. She spoke about love being patient and kind, about how the best relationships are built on friendship and trust and mutual respect. When it came time for vows, Marcus went first. He had written his own, and he delivered them without notes, speaking from the heart about our journey together. A year and a half ago, I thought I knew who I was and what I wanted, he said. I was wrong about both of those things. But I was right about one thing. I knew that you were important to me. I knew that you made me feel more like myself than anyone else ever had. I just didn't understand what that meant yet. He paused, looking out at our small gathering of family and friends before focusing back on me. You didn't just help me figure out who I was, he continued. You loved me through the process of becoming that person. You were patient when I was confused, supportive when I was scared, and constant when everything else in my life was changing. You were my anchor, my safe harbor, my home. By the time he finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the garden, including mine. My own vows were shorter, but no less heartfelt. I talked about how loving him had taught me that the best things in life are worth waiting for, that sometimes the most beautiful love stories are the ones that take time to unfold. I promise to love you not just for who you are today, but for who you're still becoming, I said. I promise to be your partner in all things, your supporter in your dreams, and your comfort in difficult times. I promise to choose you every day, in every way, for the rest of our lives. When we exchanged rings, Marcus's hands were steady this time, his voice clear and strong as he repeated the traditional vows. When the officiant pronounced us married, he kissed me with such joy and enthusiasm that our guests burst into applause and laughter. The reception was held in the same garden, a casual affair with good food, good wine, and heartfelt toasts from our family and friends. Marcus's father spoke about how proud he was of his son for having the courage to live authentically. My mother talked about how obvious it was that we belonged together, how we brought out the best in each other. But the toast that meant the most came from Marcus's sister, who had watched her brother's transformation over the past year. I've never seen Marcus as happy as he is with you, she said, raising her glass in our direction. You didn't just find love, you found yourselves. And that's the most beautiful thing of all. As the evening wound down and our guests began to leave, Marcus and I found ourselves alone in the garden, still in our wedding attire, swaying to music that was playing only in our heads. We did it, he said softly. We're married. We're married, I agreed, still somewhat amazed by the reality of it. Any regrets? He asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Only that it took us so long to get here, I said. No, he said, shaking his head. We got here exactly when we were supposed to. Everything that happened before, All the confusion and the waiting and the figuring things out, it all led us to this moment. I wouldn't change any of it. Not even the part where you were sleeping on my couch every night but insisting we were just friends. Especially not that part, he said, laughing. That's when I started falling in love with you. I just didn't know it yet. We danced until the garden staff politely informed us that they needed to close up for the night. Then we went back to our hotel, where we had booked the honeymoon suite, and spent our wedding night talking about our future, making plans and dreams and promises. I want to travel, Marcus said as we lay in the enormous hotel bed, still wearing our wedding rings and nothing else. I want to see the world with you. Where do you want to go first? Everywhere, he said. But maybe we should start with somewhere romantic. Paris? Italy. Italy sounds perfect, I agreed. We can eat pasta and drink wine and pretend to understand art. I love you, he said suddenly, turning to face me in the dim light filtering through the hotel curtains. I love you too, husband, I said, testing out the word. Husband, he repeated, grinning. I like the sound of that. As we drifted off to sleep in each other's arms, I thought about the journey that had brought us to this point. It hadn't been straightforward or simple. There had been confusion and uncertainty, difficult conversations and moments of doubt. But it had also been beautiful, watching Marcus discover who he truly was, seeing him become more confident and authentic with each passing day. Love, I realized, isn't always about knowing exactly what you want from the beginning. Sometimes it's about being open to possibilities you never considered, about growing and changing together, about having the courage to be vulnerable and honest even when it's scary. Marcus had started as my straight friend who said he was lonely. He had ended up as my husband, my partner, my person. The transformation hadn't happened overnight, but it had been worth every moment of uncertainty, every difficult conversation, every leap of faith. As I fell asleep beside the man I loved, I smiled, thinking about all the nights to come when we would fall asleep together like this, all the mornings we would wake up in each other's arms, all the adventures and challenges and ordinary moments we would share. We had found our way to each other despite all the obstacles and complications. We had built something real and lasting and true. And this, I knew, was just the beginning.